My beloved child. Pause here for a moment. Do not rush past these words, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at the exact moment your heart was quiet enough to receive it. Something happened today. Something shifted in a place you could not see. A conversation took place when you were not present, your name was spoken, and the person connected to your heart heard something about you that struck deeper than anyone expected. They tried to remain composed. They could not. At first, they said nothing. They simply stood there, listening, as though every sound around them had suddenly moved far away. The room was the same. The faces were the same. The ordinary world continued without interruption. But inside them, something broke open. A truth they had been avoiding reached them without warning, and once it entered their heart, they could no longer pretend that their feelings for you were under control. Do not skip what comes next, because the reason they broke down is not what you may think. They did not hear that you had forgotten them. They did not hear that you had replaced them. They did not hear that your heart had become cold. What they heard was far more powerful. They heard how deeply you had been affected by everything that happened between you. They heard that behind your silence, there had been pain. Behind your distance, there had been questions. Behind the strength you showed others, there had been nights when you wondered whether the connection had ever been real to them at all. And when they heard this, their face changed. For so long, they had convinced themselves that you were untouched. They told themselves that you had moved on easily, that you had not carried the same emotional weight, that perhaps they were the only ones still haunted by unfinished words and memories that refused to disappear. They created this belief because it was easier than confronting the possibility that both of you had been hurting in different rooms, under different skies, while pretending to be fine. But today, that illusion collapsed. Someone told them something about you. Not everything. Not yet. Only enough to open a door they had spent a long time trying to keep closed. It may have been a simple sentence. It may have been a detail about the way you reacted when their name was mentioned. It may have been the revelation that you still remembered something they assumed you had forgotten. But whatever was said carried the weight of truth, and their heart recognized it immediately. That is why they broke down. Not because they were weak. Not because they had lost control of their life. But because, in one sudden moment, they understood that the silence between you had not been empty. It had been filled with things neither of you knew how to say. Stay until the end, because something even more important was revealed after the tears began. My child, there are moments when the heart can survive only by hiding from itself. This person has done that more than you know. They have been hiding behind distractions, responsibilities, conversations, routines, and carefully chosen words. They have smiled when others asked about love. They have changed the subject when your name came too close. They have acted as though the past was settled, but inside them, the story never truly ended. You have felt this. There have been moments when their presence seemed to return to you without explanation. You may have been doing something ordinary when suddenly a memory rose inside you with unusual force. A phrase they once said. A look in their eyes. A moment that seemed small then but now carries a meaning you cannot ignore. You wondered why the memory returned at that exact time. It was because the connection had not become meaningless. It had become unspoken. And there is a difference. What is meaningless fades without resistance. What is unspoken stays alive beneath the surface. It waits. It gathers emotional weight. It appears in dreams, in sudden thoughts, in songs, in quiet moments, and in the strange ache of knowing that something important was interrupted before it could become what it was meant to become. Today, the interruption became impossible for them to ignore. When they first heard the words about you, they tried to respond normally. They may have nodded. They may have asked a casual question. They may even have pretended that the information did not matter. But the person speaking noticed the change in their eyes. Their voice became quieter. Their breathing changed. Their hands became still. Then they asked a question they had not planned to ask. Did they really say that? The answer came. And that answer shattered the final defense around their heart. They walked away because they did not want anyone to see what was happening. They needed space. They needed silence. They needed a place where the truth could reach them without witnesses. But once they were alone, everything they had buried returned at once. The regret. The longing. The confusion. The words they should have spoken. The moment they should have stayed. The message they almost sent. The apology they rehearsed but never delivered. The fear that if they came toward you, you would turn away. And beneath all of it, one unbearable realization: you had not been indifferent. You had been protecting yourself. That realization broke them. Do not mistake these tears for an ending. They were the beginning of honesty. For the first time in a long time, this person stopped asking how to escape their feelings and began asking what those feelings were trying to tell them. They stopped blaming timing. They stopped blaming distance. They stopped blaming circumstances, pride, confusion, or other people. The truth stood before them with no disguise. They still care. More than they admitted. More than they expected. More than they know how to explain. But there is another layer, and this is where the story becomes even more intense. What they heard about you did not only reveal your pain. It revealed your loyalty. They learned that even after everything, you had protected something private about them. You had an opportunity to speak harshly, to expose what happened, to make them look like the villain, or to win sympathy by telling the entire story. But you did not. You carried the truth with dignity. You may have cried in private, but you did not destroy their name in public. You may have felt abandoned, misunderstood, or deeply disappointed, but some part of you still remembered the person beneath their mistakes. You did not excuse what hurt you. You did not pretend everything was acceptable. But you refused to turn pain into cruelty. When they heard this, they could no longer look at themselves the same way. Because they remembered the moments when they misunderstood your silence. They thought you were punishing them. They thought you were trying to make them chase you. They thought your distance meant pride. But now they understand that your silence was the final form of love you could give without losing yourself. You stepped back because staying in the same emotional cycle was breaking you. You stopped explaining because your words were no longer being heard. You became quiet because every attempt to reach them left you feeling more alone. And while they believed you were closing the door, you were actually standing behind it, waiting for one honest knock. Today, they learned that. And the knowledge became too heavy to hold. Something huge is waiting for you in this message, so remain here. As they sat alone, they began replaying the story from the beginning. Not the version they had told themselves. Not the version that protected their ego. The real version. They remembered how naturally they were drawn to you. They remembered the first time your presence felt different from everyone else. They remembered how seen they felt when you listened. They remembered how frightened they became when the connection started becoming real. That fear is important. You may have believed they withdrew because they did not feel enough. But the deeper truth is that they withdrew because they felt more than they knew how to manage. You awakened places in them that had been sleeping for years. You touched wounds they had hidden even from themselves. You made them imagine a future, and that future required them to become more honest, more vulnerable, and more emotionally present than they had ever been. They wanted the connection. But they feared the transformation it demanded. So they hesitated. They became inconsistent. They gave warmth, then distance. They came close, then disappeared behind uncertainty. And each time they pulled away, you questioned your worth. But their retreat was never proof that you were not enough. It was proof that they were not yet prepared to stand inside something real without running from what it revealed about them. Today, the running stopped. Not completely. Not visibly. But inside them, something turned. For the first time, they saw the cost of their hesitation. They saw what their silence had done to you. They saw how many times you had waited for clarity. They saw how you had tried to understand them without receiving the same understanding in return. And they realized that the person they feared losing was the same person they had kept at a distance. That is when their tears became uncontrollable. No one around them fully understood. They may have believed it was stress. They may have assumed it was exhaustion. But heaven saw the truth of the moment. Their heart was grieving every opportunity they had wasted. There is a particular kind of sorrow that comes when someone finally recognizes the value of what they once treated as uncertain. That sorrow found them today. But listen closely, because regret alone does not create change. A person can cry and still remain the same. A person can miss you and still avoid responsibility. A person can love you and still be unprepared to love you well. This is why the next part of what happened matters more than the tears. After the emotional wave passed, they did something unexpected. They reached for their phone. They opened your conversation. They stared at your name. For several long moments, they did not type. Their fingers hovered over the screen while memory after memory moved through them. They saw old messages differently. Words they once read quickly now carried deeper meaning. They noticed where your tone changed. They noticed the last moment you tried to explain yourself. They noticed how carefully you had chosen your words, even while hurting. Then they began to type. Not a casual greeting. Not a vague message. Not a sentence designed to test whether you were still available. They began writing the truth. They wrote that they had heard something about you. They wrote that it had affected them deeply. They wrote that they had been wrong about your silence. They wrote that they now understood what you had been trying to communicate. They wrote an apology. Then they stopped. They read the message. Their heart pounded. And they deleted it. Do not be discouraged by this. The deletion was not a rejection of you. It was a confrontation with themselves. They realized that a simple message could not carry everything they needed to say. They feared that after so much silence, words might sound empty. They feared you would think they were returning only because guilt had become uncomfortable. They feared that you would read the apology and remember every time they failed to offer one when it mattered. So they erased the message, not because they had nothing to say, but because what they needed to say had become too important to send carelessly. Now they are searching for a way to approach you with truth instead of impulse. This is where your strength will matter. My child, do not allow anticipation to pull you backward into old patterns. Do not abandon your boundaries because you sense their emotions. Do not rush to rescue them from the consequences of their own choices. Compassion does not require you to forget what you learned. You can care without chasing. You can forgive without becoming unprotected. You can listen without surrendering your discernment. You can hope without building your entire future around a promise that has not yet become action. What happened today may be a turning point for them, but the proof will not be found in tears. It will be found in consistency, honesty, patience, and courage. You are not being asked to harden your heart. You are being asked to honor it. There is a difference between a closed heart and a guarded heart. A closed heart refuses every possibility. A guarded heart requires truth before trust is restored. You are allowed to require truth. This person is beginning to understand that reaching you will require more than emotion. They cannot simply return with longing and expect everything to become as it was. Too much has changed. You have changed. The version of you who once accepted confusion has grown into someone who needs clarity. They sense that today. And strangely, it did not push them away. It made them respect you more. The news they heard revealed that while you still carried love, you were no longer willing to abandon yourself for it. They understood that you had not been waiting helplessly. You had been healing. You had been rebuilding. You had been learning to choose peace, even when peace meant releasing the outcome. This frightened them, because they realized you could truly move forward. But it also awakened something courageous. For the first time, they understood that love is not proven by how strongly someone feels when they are alone. Love is proven by what they are willing to do when honesty becomes difficult. And now a choice stands before them. They can remain silent and live with the question of what might have happened. Or they can step forward, speak clearly, and accept that the answer may not come easily. They are closer to making that choice than you realize. Still, there is something you do not yet know. The person who told them about you did not share the information accidentally. They had been observing this situation for longer than either of you knew. They saw your soulmate avoid the subject. They saw the change in their expression whenever your name appeared. They saw how they compared every new connection to the feeling they once had with you. They saw how no distraction truly replaced what remained unfinished. Today, that person decided the silence had lasted long enough. But they did not reveal everything at once. They held something back. Something you said. Something you did. Something that proves your heart understood your soulmate more deeply than they ever realized. Your soulmate sensed there was more. Through tears, they looked at the person and asked, "What else do you know?" The room became quiet. The answer did not come immediately. The person hesitated because they understood that the next truth would change everything. Your soulmate asked again. This time, their voice was unsteady. "Please tell me." And then the person revealed that before you stepped away, before the silence became complete, before you finally chose to protect your peace, you had made one last decision concerning them. A decision they never knew about. A decision that explains why certain things happened the way they did. A decision that could transform the meaning of your entire separation. When your soulmate heard the first part of it, they covered their face and whispered your name. But they still had not heard the most important detail. Because just as the truth was about to be fully revealed, someone else entered the room. The conversation stopped. Your soulmate looked up, overwhelmed, confused, and desperate to know the rest. And the person who held the final piece of the story said only this: "You need to hear the rest directly from them." Now your soulmate knows there is something you never told them. Something connected to the final days before the distance. Something you carried alone. Something that may explain why your love became silent instead of disappearing. And at this very moment, they are trying to decide whether they have the courage to come to you and ask the one question that could reopen everything. But what they do not yet know is that the answer to that question will reveal not only what you felt then. It will reveal what is about to happen next.